"Daddy, why is that lady lying out here with her baby?" Anna's clear, innocent voice pulled Andrew from his thoughts after a long workday. He followed the direction of her small finger. Beneath the stone awning of the old church, in the shadows where the glow of Christmas lights faded, a young woman sat curled up. She clutched a small child tightly to her chest, her thin coat no match for the snow that was now falling harder. Andrew hesitated. Years in Boston had taught him that people's stories were never as simple as they appeared. As a single father, his first instinct was to protect Anna, so he gently squeezed her hand and began to guide her away. "They're probably just taking a short rest, sweetheart. Let's go," he said softly. But then, cough, cough, hack. The sound tore through the night. The boy's deep, rattling cough was quiet but sharp enough to pierce Andrew's conscience. It wasn't the sound of a common cold. It was the labored rasp of a chest infection, one Andrew, as a pediatrician, had heard far too many times. Colder than the snowflakes against his skin, the sound froze him in place. Hesitation vanished. He wasn't just a passerby anymore. He was a doctor, and that was a child in need. "Stay right here with Daddy," he told Anna firmly, before moving toward the shivering pair. The crunch of his steps in the snow made the woman jerk her head up. Alarm flared in her wide eyes, and by instinct she pulled the boy closer, her frail body forming a protective shield. Andrew stopped a few feet away, raising his hands slowly to show he meant no harm. He crouched down, his voice low and gentle. "Sorry to intrude. My name's Andrew. I'm a pediatrician. I couldn't help but hear your son's cough." Her wary eyes flickered, suspicion still heavy, but at the word pediatrician the tension in her gaze eased slightly. "He just has a cold," she whispered hoarsely. "That doesn't sound like a simple cold," Andrew said gently. "Look, there's a cafe across the street that's still open. Please, let me get your little one something warm to drink. That's all, just to warm him up." He made it clear the offer was for her son. Clara's instincts screamed not to trust him. Yet the warmth spilling from the cafe windows was impossible to ignore, and Ben's uneven breathing against her chest was worsening. After a long pause, she gave a tiny nod. The moment they stepped inside, they were wrapped in heat and the rich aromas of coffee, cinnamon, and gingerbread. Ben burrowed deeper into his mother's coat, inhaling deeply. Andrew guided them to a quiet booth, then returned with a tray. Steaming cocoa for Anna and Ben, coffee for himself, ginger tea for Clara, and a few warm croissants. Ben, after a moment of shyness, wrapped his tiny hands around the mug. His first careful sip lit up his face with joy. Watching him, Clara's guarded exterior began to melt. She whispered a faint "thank you," barely audible over the carols playing in the cafe. After a while, Andrew said quietly, "He needs a warm place tonight. His lungs can't take another night outside. There's a hotel nearby. I'll get you a room." Clara stared at him in disbelief. "Why? Why would you?" She couldn't finish. Andrew glanced at Anna, who was happily sharing her pastry with Ben. "Because no child should be cold on Christmas Eve," he said sincerely. "And because I'm a father too. Think of this as one parent helping another, nothing more." He promised he would only walk them to the door, pay for the room, and leave. No strings. His honesty and respect broke through her last wall of resistance. Tears blurred Clara's vision as she looked at her son, already dozing at the table, his cheeks flushed from warmth and cocoa. She nodded. Later, the quiet click of the hotel room door sealed them into safety. Clara laid Ben down on the soft bed. For the first time in months, he wasn't lying on the cold ground. He shifted only slightly before sinking into deep, peaceful sleep. Clara moved to the window, parting the heavy curtains. Outside, the city shimmered in Christmas brilliance. Strings of lights glittered on fresh snow, and distant hymns from a choir drifted through the night air. Once, these sights would have mocked her loss. Tonight, wrapped in warmth, they meant something new. They were no longer unreachable luxuries, but a backdrop to a small miracle, a stranger's kindness. Gratitude swelled in her chest, sharp and overwhelming. It wasn't for the holiday itself, but for the man who had seen her, stopped, and given them dignity. Clara returned to the bed, and slipped under the thick comforter beside Ben. For the first time in countless nights, she fell into a deep, unbroken sleep, free of cold, free of fear. The next morning, A gentle knock stirred her awake. Anxiety tightened her stomach as she opened the door. Andrew stood there with Anna, holding 2 paper bags. "Good morning," he said with a warm smile. "I brought breakfast. And this is for Ben." He handed her one bag filled with milk, pastries, and a bright red toy car. The other bag held a small doll for Anna. "He might like that," Andrew said softly, glancing toward the bed where Ben still slept, breathing more easily. Clara's hands trembled as she held the toy. Just a simple car, but to her, it was everything her son had been missing. A piece of a normal Christmas, a fragment of the childhood he deserved. The tears came hard and fast. I don't know what to say," she sobbed. "It's been so long." Andrew waited quietly, patient, while she cried. He motioned for Anna to sit in the hallway chair. Then with quiet compassion he asked, "How did things get this way, Clara?" At last, meeting his steady, non-judgmental gaze, Clara felt her defenses collapse. Her voice trembled as she poured out her entire story. She spoke of her dream to become a fashion designer, of the first love who had given her Ben but later abandoned them both. She told of being cast out by her family, of the desperate fight to survive on her own, until she was utterly drained and had nothing left. Andrew listened in silence, never breaking in. When she finally stopped, he didn't reach for hollow reassurances. Instead, he gave her something real. "I have a little cabin in Vermont," he said steadily. "It belonged to my grandparents. Nobody stays there anymore. The air is clean, good for Ben's lungs. And the town is quiet." Clara stared at him, startled. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Andrew said plainly, "you and your son can live there. Think of it as looking after the place for me if that helps. You'll be able to find work. Ben can go to school. You both can begin again." It wasn't just an offer. It was salvation. A chance Clara had never dared to hope for, even in her most desperate nights. The tiny spark of hope she had clung to the evening before now ignited into a steady flame. The cabin was exactly as Andrew had described. Snug, warm, tucked away among snow-covered woods. The air was so pure each breath felt like a cleansing gift. For Clara and Ben, it wasn't merely shelter. It was a brand new beginning. During those first days, Clara busied herself making the cabin into a home. She swept and arranged, built fires in the hearth, cooked hearty meals, and watched Ben play in the snow for the very first time. Slowly, the constant shadow of fear and worry that had haunted her gave way to something she hadn't felt in months: peace. When the rhythm of life settled, Clara began searching for work. No longer dreaming of dazzling runways, she simply needed steady income to care for her son. One day, walking through the quiet town, she spotted a sign in a tailor's window. "Seamstress wanted." Mrs. Gable's shop was small but alive with fabric bolts and half-finished dresses. The silver-haired woman, sharp-eyed and blunt, looked Clara over. "Can you really sew, or just patch a button?" she asked. Rather than answer, Clara requested to prove herself. Mrs. Gable handed her a blouse with a torn collar and pointed toward the old sewing machine. Clara sat down, and as her fingers glided across the fabric, the old spark came rushing back. She hadn't touched her craft in so long, yet the skill returned instantly. Her stitches were clean, her seams flawless. In just half an hour, the blouse looked better than before. Mrs. Gable examined it closely, glasses perched on her nose. She said nothing for a long moment, then gave a decisive nod. "Start tomorrow." Andrew's weekend visits to Vermont soon became routine. At first, he excused them as trips to check on the cabin or bring supplies, but the truth quickly became clear: Anna, his daughter, begged to visit Ben whenever she could. Within a single day, the two children became inseparable, their bond effortless and pure. They built towering snowmen, nibbled cookies fresh from Clara's oven, and shared whispered secrets only children could understand. Their laughter filled the cabin, bringing warmth to rooms that had long been quiet. While the children reveled in their world, Andrew and Clara found their own moments. Side by side on the porch, coffee mugs warming their hands, they watched Anna and Ben tumbling in the snow. Their talks began with the children. "Ben looks stronger," Andrew observed. "This air is doing wonders for him." "Anna is brilliant," Clara replied, smiling. "Ben's learned so many new games from her." From there, the conversations grew deeper. Andrew spoke of his late wife, of the struggles of raising Anna alone. Clara, growing more assured, shared about her work in the shop and the little designs she sketched in her spare time. They uncovered a quiet kinship. Two single parents who had endured loss yet were determined to rebuild for their children. The distance between helper and help slowly disappeared, replaced by true friendship, by a bond neither expected. Without realizing it, Anna and Ben's joyous laughter had become an invisible thread, tying the adults closer each day. But Clara's gift could not remain hidden forever. One evening gown she had altered, with subtle, brilliant touches, for a wealthy tourist happened to catch the attention of someone in Boston's fashion circles. A few weeks later, the shop's bell rang in an unusual way. The man who stepped inside was clearly not a local. Draped in an expensive cashmere coat, hair immaculate, his presence carried power. His gaze swept the room until it landed on Clara's unfinished designs. "I'm looking for Clara Evans," he said, his voice deep and commanding. Clara, bent over a seam, glanced up. "That's me. How can I help you?" "My name is Victor Harris." The name struck Clara like lightning. Victor Harris, the legendary designer every fashion student idolized. She shot to her feet, suddenly clumsy with her hands. Victor smiled, professional yet not unkind. "I've seen your work. The emerald gown. You reshaped the shoulders and waist beautifully. That's not the skill of an ordinary seamstress. That's real talent." He wasted no time. He had seen more of her pieces through the same client and was convinced. He laid out an offer Clara once would have given anything for. "Come to New York," Victor said. "Join my studio. I'll give you the chance to launch your own collection at Fashion Week. I'll make you a star. With your gift and my direction, success is inevitable." Every word was a spell, awakening the dream Clara had long buried. Her own collection. New York Fashion Week. Her heart raced. But then came the words that pulled her sharply back. "Of course, it demands full commitment. You'll need to move to New York immediately. All your time, all your energy, dedicated solely to the work." When he left, leaving his business card behind, Clara's world tilted. His proposal wasn't just opportunity, it was a cruel crossroads. On one side, her career, her passion, the dream she had chased for years. On the other, the cozy cabin, the steady tailor's job, the sound of Ben laughing with Anna, the quiet afternoons with Andrew by her side. That night, Clara sat by the fire unable to sleep, watching her son rest peacefully. Accepting Victor's offer meant abandoning the haven they had fought to build. It meant leaving Andrew, the man who had shown her trust, kindness, and a reason to hope again. Starting over in a bustling, unfamiliar city would mean beginning from scratch. Yet, rejecting Victor's offer meant letting go of the only dream she had ever cherished. Possibly for good. Clara's heart was split in two, the weight of her dilemma tearing at her peace. For the first time since arriving, the calm she had carried within her was gone. A year slipped by in what felt like a single heartbeat. When Christmas returned, the Vermont town glowed brighter and warmer than ever before. A pure blanket of snow rested on every rooftop, while strings of twinkling lights set the square aglow. Clara, Andrew, Anna, and Ben stood together in the festive crowd, sipping hot chocolate as the choir's harmonies filled the air. Little Ben, now healthy and lively, sat proudly on Andrew's shoulders, clapping along with delight. Clara soaked in the scene, her chest swelling with peace. She was no longer the woman shivering in the cold, homeless and lost. Now she had work she loved, a roof over her head, and most of all, she had a family. Her thoughts were suddenly pierced by a sharp, familiar voice. "Clara, I thought you'd know better than to squander your talent in a place like this." Her pulse quickened as she turned. There stood Victor Harris, his designer coat and impatient stare a striking contrast to the warmth of the townsfolk. Andrew instinctively slipped an arm protectively around her shoulders, frowning at the man. "Mr. Harris," Clara said, steadying her voice though her heart raced. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I've come to give you one last chance," Victor said curtly, his eyes flicking with disdain toward Andrew and the children. "Fashion Week is coming. That position is still open. But you must choose, right now, between a legendary career or this." He gestured toward the cozy celebration around them. The weight in his words was unmistakable. Before Clara stretched the path to the recognition she had always longed for. People nearby began to pause, overhearing their exchange. She inhaled deeply, lifting her gaze to Victor's ambitious eyes, then to Andrew's face, steady and filled with trust. Finally, she glanced at Ben and Anna, their innocent eyes looking up at her. Turning back to Victor, Clara spoke clearly, without hesitation. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Harris. It's an extraordinary opportunity," she said, her voice loud enough for others to hear. "But I've realized my dream has changed. Or maybe I've only just discovered what it truly is." She reached for Andrew's hand. "My success isn't in New York. It's here." For once, Victor was caught off guard. Anger flickered briefly before he covered it with a tight, professional smirk. Without another word, he gave a curt nod and disappeared into the crowd, his expensive silhouette swallowed by the lights. As the music swelled again, Andrew squeezed her hand. The turmoil that had weighed on her heart was gone. She had chosen, and she knew it was right. "You just walked away from the world," he whispered. "No," Clara replied with a smile, shaking her head. "I chose mine." Andrew's gaze lingered on her, then shifted to the two children pointing joyfully at the lights. A year ago, on a night like this, he had met two broken, lonely souls. Now beside him stood a radiant woman filled with hope. He realized it wasn't just that he had saved her. Clara and Ben had healed him and Anna too. Leaning close, his voice warm and steady over the choir's song, he whispered, "No one has to be alone on Christmas again." It wasn't a comfort, it was a vow. Taking her hand, he led her through the crowd toward the small church at the end of town. Anna and Ben followed, curious and wide-eyed. Inside, the atmosphere was hushed and sacred. The glow of countless candles lit the space with a soft, otherworldly light, while the choir's rendition of Silent Night filled every corner. Andrew guided Clara to the altar, where the flames flickered in her eyes. Anna and Ben huddled together in the pews, watching closely. "Clara," Andrew began, his voice thick with emotion. "A year ago, on Christmas Eve, I met you. I thought I was simply doing the right thing, but I never imagined that act would lead me to the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. You and Ben brought laughter back into my life and warmth into my daughter's world. You've shown me that family isn't just something you're born into, it's something you find and choose." Slowly, he dropped to one knee on the cold stone floor. His eyes locked onto hers, glistening with tears. "I can't promise you fame or dazzling runways," he said softly. "What I have is a heart that loves you, a daughter who adores you, and a home that will always welcome you. Clara Evans, will you marry me?" Tears of joy streamed down her face. With the candlelight dancing and the choir's voices soaring, she nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes. Yes, I will." That night, the snow-covered cabin glowed in the warmth of the fireplace. 4 stockings hung neatly across the mantel, each embroidered with a name: Andrew, Clara, Anna, and Ben. After excitedly hanging their stockings, the children had drifted to sleep on the thick rug. Andrew and Clara sat together on the sofa, hands entwined, watching their little ones by the fire. Outside, snow fell gently, wrapping the cabin in peace. A year ago, they had been strangers, each carrying their own solitude. Now they were a family. Though the children's laughter had faded into dreams, the happiness lingered in every breath, every glance exchanged between them. One small act of kindness on a Christmas Eve had changed their lives forever, binding their hearts into one home filled with love.